let me go ahead and get this out the way because once I get started with this message, I do not intend to sway away. Many times you will come and see a live and you will see that happen. I'll be on track and then I get caught up in the comment section and it kind of, gets me off center. So I'm going to do my best to not pay attention to the comments. And the only time I'm going to interrupt is to mention that anybody that gets in the comments can definitely chime in and talk with one another. And if you comment after this, so if you're tuning in live or after the live stream, I appreciate you for coming here and hearing this message because today is a very important message that I indeed will leave up and make sure that I get enough people to pay attention to what I'm about to talk about. First off, let's get this out the way. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, throw 50K in the chat. We have a 50,000 subscriber movement going on right now. We're going for 50,000 subs this year, and I know we're going to get it because I'm Boy Drew the Charm God, king of uncomfortable, controversial conversations. You are tuned in to the Charm Hour Live, and we're often having so many conversations. I would also um ask of you to join the community. When you have community posts, a lot of creators, I don't know how many of y'all are involved with, you know, the social media, not social media, but the social community aspect of YouTube where, you can, tune in to the videos, but you can also, post and respond and, talk from that aspect. So I would ask that you be a part of that because I do share shows there. And I also film on the LFTP network as well as the Greatest American Alive. Okay, so I have different subject matter for different channels. On this channel, I primarily talk relationships, the gender dynamic between men and women. But we can talk about all sorts of things. A lot of times I'll go politics. A lot of times I will talk about, you know, current events or whatever the case may be. But I primarily talk about the relationship between men and women, the gender dynamics, and I talk about relationships and how it pertains to black people. And there's a reason why. At the root of why I speak to black people is because where we are politically, where we are politically, okay? Because I feel that politically we are behind, but we have to go to the root problem of why we're politically behind. We have to go start with the family. And until you address the issues with the family, until you address the issues on what's going on inside the black community, they will never understand black American politics. We will never understand black American politics. So again, if you're just tuning in, hit that like button. Go ahead, hit that like button. Let's get them likes up because we want everybody involved in on this conversation tonight. Today. Not tonight. I'm sorry. Today. Afternoon. We want everybody to tap in on this conversation that we're about to have as it pertains to black people. Because guess what? At the end of the day, we are Americans. We are indeed Americans, and we need to understand that we have a part of this society. We are part of this society. We're part of the community. We've built this community. We've helped build this country. And we need to be the best citizens we can be. We need to take a hold of the American dream. But we can't take hold of the American dream if we're not talking about one of the core issues we have in our community, and that's the broken family. So y'all go ahead, hit that like button. Hit that like button. Throw 50K in the chat. 50K in the chat. Because that's representative of the 50,000K movement. Well, 50,000. I keep saying 50,000K, but 50K sub movement we have on this channel. Because we're going to get 50,000 people to have this conversation. Now, I'm going to tie in something that's a little controversial. I'm going to tie in what's controversial with what's going on with conversation tonight and what they have going on. I'm going to tie that into today's message. But I'm setting it all up because once I get into it, I'm really going to get into it, and I don't have any plans on stopping or really getting involved in the comment section. So I'm just setting it up as you can, see where I'm going. What's the basis of my message? Why do I say the things that I say on this channel? And again, I say that everybody can come here. Everybody, we're inclusive, but we're speaking specifically to black people because I feel like as a black representative in the community, I want to help my community out. And I think that in order to help my community out, I have to be a thought leader. I have to be a thought leader and put thoughts in the community that we need to think about so we can eventually have action. We have to understand that eventually you have to have action. So I can be a thought leader. I can put thoughts out there to someone. But at the end of the day, we have to make that thing come to life through action. Okay? We have to make that thing come to life through action. One of the main things that I'm hearing about right now, you hear about like the DEI situation with Donald Trump. You'll hear about everything that Donald Trump is doing right now. You will see that black people are essentially crashing out over this. Black people are essentially crashing out in the sense that they don't understand it. We're crying and complaining online about how bad things are going to be. We're talking about how, we fear that we're going back to a time of slavery. We fear that we're going back to a time of Jim Crow. We're being mistreated. We're just looking at others and pointing the fingers at others. And we're not taking a look at ourselves and understanding that we are in a dilemma. We don't even understand the real dilemma that we're in. And one of the dilemmas that we are in this community is that there is no real leadership. There's no real leadership in our community. There's no real direction in our community at all for us to even uh, really start to evaluate what someone else is doing to us. We have to look at what we're doing to each other. We have to look inward and see what's going on in our own society. And one of the things that's happening to us is that we are taking advantage of one another. Black people will take advantage of one another in so many different ways. We'll prey on each other, even with poor information, to the point to where it'll be the community's detriment but our personal gain. That happens a lot. There's a lot of bad teachings out here, and you have these people. What they will do is, you have to understand, like in the black community, right? We speak well in terms of great orators, no matter what we say, whether we're being proper, whether we're being, whether we're being animated, we garner a lot of attention. People will look at us, and we inspire people to behave in a certain manner. So we do it to each other. Even preaching, if you look at preaching, right? So you look at like the charismatic preacher movement. Where did that come from? The charismatic preacher movement came out of the black church, because when you look at preachers in the black church, they're very animated and they draw people in. So your charismatic church movement, which was even like when you look at like Billy Graham and your white preachers, right? They're mimicking that evangelical movement comes out of the black church because of the way preachers preach and the way they talk. We're all the dialogue that black people have that's very attractive, even when it comes down to music. So you have to understand that we have a great influence when we're speaking and talking to people and teaching people. There's a level of comfort, there's a level of rapport that I think we can naturally build with people. And that's really why you have such an attraction to black artistry. It's very convincing in the sense that it can reach down in your soul. That's why they call it soul music. We make a certain music, we make a certain vibe that can connect to somebody, and that's why you look at a lot of the popular music is typically gonna be black. Now, that's not to make this a racial thing, that's not to make this a prejudicey thing. We all bring something to the table on earth. I'm just talking about one of the greatest assets that someone black American or African descent has just naturally, but the American black especially has it like no other. So when we're out here teaching, um, preaching, singing, whatever it is, it really gets to the depths of someone's soul. That's just how powerful we are. So you have to be real careful when you're out here and you're giving information and it's either false or you represent it in a false way, because you can really mislead people. You can mislead people in such an impactful way that'll be a detriment to their lives. We have the capabilities of doing that. So when you are out here walking in a certain light, in a direction, and you want others to do that, it's got to match, whether it be good or bad. But let us discern what's bad or not. Which kind of gets me here. What gets me into this message and what gets me into this whole situation with conversation tonight. I've been telling y'all for a very, very long time about these relationship coaches and what they need to have in their background to be able to sit up here and preach, teach, and whatever the case may be. And one of the things that I've said, this does not come before having God in your relationship, but this is a very important part of that whole conversation is you have to have some time in that area. When we're talking about marriage, when we're talking about relationships, you have to have some time in that area. You can't just be waking up one day, you a professional dater, or you've been dating, you ain't never got to the part of where, relationships should end in marriages. If you ain't never had no real marriage, a long-term relationship, or have children, or whatever the case may be, there's certain conversations you shouldn't be having. And I've been saying that this entire time. There's certain conversations you just should not be having, because when it comes down to it, I can hear some of these coaches and some of these people that y'all like to listen to so much and tell that it's bullshit. I could be like, nah, that don't even sound right. What you're saying is garbage and bogus, because that's not how things really practically happen. But because it sounds romanticized, y'all eat it up. A lot of the people out here will eat this up. They will eat this up. All the information, because it look good, it sound good, it make you feel good, they connect to you, and and all they're doing is helping you sustain yourself in a poor situation. But I've been saying that. Just like when I talked about Cheyenne Bryan. Okay, here it is with Cheyenne Bryan, right? I said I listened to her entire Cam Newton interview. This is the first time I ever heard of this lady. And when I listened to it and I heard it, I said, hey, that does not sound like somebody with real relationship experience. And as soon as this person brings up the Lord, or they bring God into it, now you're also introducing how things should be done biblically, which we will get to here. You're introducing how something should be done biblically. When you do that, you bring in an ideology that needs to be protected, because the way God wants to operate is going to be righteously. That's one thing. And then you're also putting in a false experience in that really just confirms people's trauma, so to speak, or what they've been through. Not understanding the full scale scope of how these relationships go. And the third piece that you're putting behind it is that you have some kind of clinical knowledge. So the group that you're appealing to seems like you check all the boxes and you fraud. You don't know what you're talking about, because those that can go and say no, that's inaccurate, who have the experience and the real certifications in these things, can tell you that you are out of pocket. Whether it be somebody that really knows the word and can challenge you on the word, somebody that's really had the experience, or somebody who has the education and even be talking that counselor shit, which is what has all three of these things have been checked on Cheyenne Bryan. But when I heard that, I was like, that's poor information. But this lady get a whole goddamn press run just to get in front of y'all and give y'all bad information. just to get in front of y'all and give y'all poor information, influencing people. I mean, we got on Derek Jackson for doing this, but there's no difference in Cheyenne Bryant and Derek Jackson. There's no difference in anybody that's going to pander to you and tell you what you want to hear. There's no difference in them. And one of the main reasons and why this has been a situation is because there are a lot of people up here talking that don't have the experience. And what happens is you'll say that, or we will say that, those of us that have said this, get on here. You might have a clip out here, might have a some type of situation where there's a lot of views on it and comments, and y'all get in the comments and say the silliest things. Get in the comments and say the silliest shit like, not everybody wants to be married. Not everybody wants to be this. And you're a part of the audience that's fulfilling that bullshit where these people out here preaching and teaching the wrong stuff. Now, if you kept it at experience, and if you kept it at, what your ever bogus ideas and you never brought in God into it, I don't think I would have that much of a problem. And I'm not sure if Derek Jackson did that. I don't think Derek Jackson brought that in. So it's like, okay, you pandered, you did your thing, you made your money, whatever the case may be. But once you start to put some type of biblical representation in there, you can damn near turn yourself into a cult. You got to be careful sharing like scripture and mixing it with your language. That is crap, because a lot of that word calls people because it confirms a lot of things. And it's misused. If you take confirmation out the word and misuse it, you can mislead people. That's what be happening. So that becomes, to me, the more egregious thing about someone like a Cheyenne Bryant. Okay? Conversation tonight is in the same vein, but probably another beast, because Conversation Tonight typically has a lot of clips and a lot of their videos kind of go viral. They have everybody involved in the conversation, which off first bat I think is very good. I think that's very good. Some things that kind of stand out, though, or always stood out to me from the get-go was, I mean, they get a lot of different people in on their shows. They're able to have a lot of people on that panel or guest on. But there does seem to be a level of pandering when we begin to talk about the relationship or the reality of it. When I would listen to like those clips or kind of get into their shows, some of it seemed like it's borderline pandering, because when we're really having a real relationship conversation, when we're going to have that conversation for sure, we have to have it in such a way when it's informative that you have some people involved in the conversation, I'll say that are giving some real accurate, down-to-earth conversation or points of view. You can't have a panel where everything seems like it's going in one direction and really not talking about the end piece of all this is to have a marriage and what does it take to sustain a family. And there's only one person that really did that, and that was Kevin Samuels, who would also get in some scripture, who would also say some things as far as how to be righteous and moral. But people miss that in his message. What happens is he built that whole arena for people to come out of and make money and start giving false information. But when on that panel, it's like I never really heard on a show where it was like, okay, it's all points of view. It was kind of always this thing of, it seemed like you got single people up there, you got a lot of like smooth talking and shit up there on this panel. So it always seems very pleasant. Where are the people that's got the 20-year marriage, 30-year marriage, whatever the case may be? Where are these people and why are they not up there? That's what I've always thought about them. Now, insert this Kittie Rose chick. I will say, I've listened to Kittie Rose. I've heard her clips. I personally was like, hey, that's a woman with a potential to come influence other women on how to interact with their husbands, because that's very important. That's one thing that you have not seen in the space is enough women. Now there's a podcast, I really got to get their name. There's some older women, and they talk about a wife and how a wife should behave. That information is indeed out there, but it's kind of like rarely are you seeing that. So when I saw Kittie, I was like, she's dope. I think she has a dope energy, and I never really seen nothing bad. But even with her, I will say there were times where I tuned her out. I was like, I don't know about that. It sounds good. Let me tell you something. All these people that make the relationship or the marriage sound hella easy, and like you can always work through things with some kind of like mantra or some shit like that, they don't know what they talking about. You can work through your marriage. You can work through your relationship, but the main piece you gonna need in that is God, because God offers the instruction on how to do that. All that other worldly ass shit, all that, pop culture, psychotherapy, that's not gonna get you out the storm. And so what happens is when I'm hearing biblical text come with pop culture ideology and get shot out to people, I know that that's a major red flag. However, I can respect the fact that she did have some authority over women and how to think differently. Because typically, with our black women, they are mean, they have attitudes, they've been raised to be independent. There's a certain ideology they have. So when she comes in and she offers that, I think that's a good thing. But when I think about that entire panel, I can always tell when I'm being pandered to, because I've never watched a full episode of that bullshit. I ain't never seen a full episode of Conversation Tonight. I can look at some of these episodes. I can look at some of that shit when they get to talking about relationships, and I can automatically point out to you and tell you it's bullshit. Number one, if there's a man up there talking, I need to see a man that's been married, and I need to see a man that's been married for quite some time. We can have a conversation, because it's one thing to get with a woman, and it's another thing to maintain a woman. It's another thing to maintain a woman. You can get a woman, but can you maintain a woman? And when you've maintained a woman and you lived with a woman, then you understand how that shit go. I don't hear none of them niggas getting up there doing that. I'm just being real. I've never heard one. Mr. Let Go, I think that's his name. He's kind of like that. I followed him. I haven't seen him in a while, but he's been married. He's got the time. He know how to have a certain conversation. I don't know these people personally, by the way. I'm critiquing their teachings. I'm critiquing your teachings. When you put it out here, you put it out for critique. It's going to be people that's going to critique me. I don't care. But when you have certain brothers up there, I know already. I think you full of shit. Or you are incapable of speaking in that arena because you do not understand it. I don't know a Trip Fontaine, but just how he dialogue and talk, I'm like, we can talk about self-awareness and self-development, but where's your wife and where's your children? Then you out your league when you talking about that. Relationships have steps, y'all. Relationships have stations. You got the beginning part, you got the part where the children enter, you got the part where the children get old, you got to take it. Relationships, just like our lives and our ages, you got to know what happens at each level. You ain't no motherfucking expert on no marriage in 8 years. You got 8 years of marriage and you telling somebody about marriage and all you got is 8, but when you got people 20 plus years, who do you think is the greater expert? But we don't want that. So when you got these people up here that look good and look a certain way and talking to you a certain way and you locked in on that, then you get misled. You gonna get misled because that ain't the full case. That's not what we doing here. You don't really want to hear how this shit is. You don't really want to hear how this marriage and relationship goes. Yes, it's supposed to be forever. Yeah, you supposed to love. But let me tell you something. Love, look at the biblical definition of love and what it is. Love is not superficial. Love is very much so sacrificial. Love ain't taking trips, passports, and what. Come on. That ain't love. The key ingredient in love is patience. Shout out to Rob J for blessing me with that one. The key ingredient to love is patience. So when you hearing a lot of this shit, this pop culture stuff is dangerous in itself already, but once you put that biblical aspect to it, it gets wild. And let me tell you what's going to happen off the rip. Once you start to put the biblical aspect, I'm going to bless y'all. I don't care if it's one person watching this. You going to get this. The truth is going to fact check itself if you talking about being righteous. The truth the truth has to endure and keep its integrity. Don't play with God's name. If you giving bullshit information and you put God's name attached to it, and the scripture attached to it, it's going to fact check itself. And if you a liar, it's going to come out. You better off just pandering like Derrick Jackson. You better off. I never heard Derrick Jackson say nothing about a scripture. He was just pandering. Just pander in peace and get your money, get caught up cheating, and move on. But as soon as you put the Lord's name on it, you about to cook yourself. So, you have someone like Kittie Rose, who I respect. I like what she say, and I'm sure people have tuned in to her. You juxtapose with you on the net talking about E-Nas. Which is you. Your own image, by the way. Talking about E-Nas. And now someone in your camp who is a notable person on that show is making these accusations about what you were doing with the host, who we know was pandering anyway. This is dangerous for our people. I keep saying that. It's what we're doing. The elements in what we're doing in that relationship conversation is too sensitive for black people to be playing with. That's why I don't play with the conversation. And let me tell you something else. I got to sit down with the great Andre Taylor. And one thing that he said was, tell your story before your enemy does. If that was going to be your message, you come out with what you were doing already, and you beat people to the punch, and then you talk about this relationship thing. Talk about how you had to learn to come up. Talk about how you had to learn to have a better relationship with your husband. Talk about that. Maybe you were a cheater. Maybe you were somebody that was disgusting at first. Maybe you were somebody that was a whore at first. Maybe that's the case. And you changed your ways. Talk about that. Don't sit up here and make it seem like you're perfect. See, I'm not perfect. I got a slow ground on my channel, and I don't care. Because we're going to build our 50,000 people off the truth. I don't need to blow up. I don't need to go viral. I got a purpose here. Do I want to sell merch? Yeah, I want to sell some merch. Do I want to get some Cash App donations to build up a company in the show? Yeah, I want to do that. It's a business deal. We have business here. We acting like content creators don't do that. But I'm not chasing no dollar. I'm chasing the game. Deion Sanders, when he said he chased the game. Why? Because you have to have an integrity, and you have to have an integrity, and you have to have a level of commitment to something greater than yourself to be truly successful. I don't have to pander. I don't want to pander. That's not my purpose. My purpose is to really have a relationship conversation here for everybody that have it and help our people. But I can't do that if I'm lying to you. I can't do that if I'm lying to you and telling you shit that make you feel good. I'll never be able to change the situation for us. And I can't change it. Just change the thought pattern and process. I'll never be able to do that. So the one thing that I can't do is sit up here and lie. I got to tell who I am and what I've been a part of. It does not mean that somebody redemption ain't real. It does not mean that somebody hasn't really lived, they're not living the truth or whatever the case may be, or that they're going through something. Man, nah. It don't mean none of that. But you got to be a good representation of what you representing. If you representing positive, if you representing something good, if that's what you're doing, then you need to be living it too. See, that's a lot of the preachers' problems. A lot of the preachers, a lot of the preachers are out here trying to tell you how to live and how to operate, and they not living like that. You are souring on something that's meant for good. It's disingenuous. How can I trust you on anything else? I don't know what to what extent Kittie Rose did whatever was alleged about her. I don't know. I do know I never saw that eating ass clip before that I just seen that everybody's watching. I've never seen that. I have never seen that clip a day in my life until now. Never. And it does look odd. The optics on it is wild. So if you know that you were out here doing something or saying something that's contrary to what you talking about now, you gotta meet it. Look, man, on this very channel, I didn't told people before, man. I didn't said all sorts of things. I said all sorts of things as far as polygamy, polyamory. I said a lot of those things before. I have. And when you know better, you do better. When you know better, you do better. So I stopped talking about that shit because I learned and I grew. And I was like, God, when you want to line up and be righteous, when you want to line up and become a righteous person, you become a righteous person. I'm going to talk better. I'm going to say better things. But I've always been explicit with who I am and what I represent. I've always been explicit with who I am and what I represent. So I don't have to worry about being outed about anything that I've openly talked about. But before we get to finding out about all the stuff that these people be going through, why y'all don't ever see the red flags to begin with? Why y'all don't? The only thing they can say about Kevin Samuels, they just talked about him and tried to shame him, called him gay and all that other stuff. They just went at him. You can't. Yeah, they was visceral and venomous with him because what he was talking about was a conviction on them. What he was talking about was a conviction. So they reacted to it. When you get to these people, it's so candy coated. It's a candy coated message. It's very much so a candy coated message.